Fix yourself before fixing the world. Look around you. Everyone wants to change the world. They want to fix society, fix politics, fix the system, fix the economy. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people can't even fix themselves. They want to clean the streets when their own rooms are a disaster. They want to lead others when they can't even lead their own impulses, and they wonder why no one listens. The starting point isn't out there. It's in here. Personal responsibility is the foundation of every meaningful change. If your habits are out of control, if your words don't align with your actions, if your values collapse the moment they're tested, what authority do you have to lecture anyone about what needs to be done? Order precedes influence. A man or woman in chaos is a liability, not a leader. You think the world is unfair, maybe. But the mirror doesn't lie. If you don't have discipline, if you can't keep your promises, if you can't even show up consistently for the people who count on you, what right do you have to demand change from others? Start with small victories. Wake up at the time you said you would. Keep your word even when it costs you. Clean up your environment. Manage your emotions instead of being enslaved by them. These aren't meaningless gestures. They're the bricks that build credibility, character, and strength. Because here's the truth: hypocrisy destroys leadership. You can shout, you can point fingers, you can make all the noise you want. But if your life doesn't reflect your message, no one will take you seriously. The world doesn't follow what you say. It follows who you are. And when you start fixing yourself, really fixing yourself, something remarkable happens. People notice. You don't even have to preach. Your life becomes the sermon. Your discipline, your integrity, your calm in chaos, they speak louder than words. That's the ripple effect of self-mastery. But don't get arrogant. This isn't about achieving perfection. It's about humility, recognizing that self-mastery is a lifelong process. Every day you sharpen your mind, refine your character, and align your actions with your values. And in doing so, you create a foundation strong enough to actually bear the weight of making a difference. So before you try to fix the world, fix yourself. Clean up your life. Take ownership of your habits, your words, your responsibilities. Because only when you've built order within can you bring order without. Only then do you have the strength and credibility to change anything beyond your own skin. And maybe, just maybe, that's how the world actually changes one disciplined, honest, courageous person at a time. Personal responsibility is the foundation of change because nothing meaningful can be built on a life that is out of control. Before you can demand better from the world, you have to demand better from yourself. That begins with owning every part of your life, your choices, your habits, your failures, and even your excuses. The harsh truth is that many people point to external problems as the reason for their dissatisfaction, but the greatest battles they need to fight are internal. If your own daily routines are sloppy, if you break promises to yourself, if you let your impulses dictate your actions, then it doesn't matter how righteous your intentions are, you have no real ground to stand on. The world will not take your voice seriously because even you haven't learned to govern yourself. Taking personal responsibility means refusing to see yourself as a victim of every circumstance. Life will be unfair. People will wrong you. Systems will fail you. But sitting in that bitterness does nothing to improve your situation. What changes everything is when you start to act as though your decisions matter. Because they do. The way you wake up, how you spend your time, the company you keep, the words you choose, the work you do. These are all building blocks of the life you're creating. When you accept that every action carries weight, you stop waiting for someone else to fix things and start taking control of what you can. It's not glamorous or easy. Taking ownership requires discipline, and discipline is uncomfortable. It means getting up when you'd rather sleep in. It means speaking the truth when lying would be easier. It means doing what you said you'd do long after the excitement has worn off. But that discipline is what separates people who wish for change from those who actually create it. The strength you build by taking responsibility for your own life becomes the foundation for influencing anything beyond yourself. This approach also forces you to confront your own flaws instead of hiding them behind criticism of others. It's easy to point out what's wrong with the world. It's much harder to look in the mirror and acknowledge where you're falling short. But if you can't be honest with yourself, you'll never grow. Accepting responsibility is an act of courage. It says, I may not control everything, but I will control what I can, and I will hold myself accountable for it. When you begin to live this way, the external chaos matters less because your internal world is in order. You move from blame to action, from complaint to construction. That shift doesn't just improve your own life, it sets an example for others. People respect those who lead themselves first because they know that kind of leadership is rare. And in the end, every meaningful movement, every revolution, every transformation, personal or collective, begins with someone who decided to take full responsibility for their own life. Order precedes influence because you cannot lead, inspire, or change anyone if your own life is steeped in chaos. People sense it. They see it in your habits, in your demeanor, in the way you handle pressure. When your personal world is out of balance, your emotions volatile, your habits undisciplined, your responsibilities neglected, your words lose their weight. Influence doesn't come from noise or intensity, it comes from credibility. And credibility is built by demonstrating that you can first bring order to your own corner of existence. Think about it, why would anyone trust your advice on leadership, discipline, or morality if you can't even keep your own promises or maintain control over your own impulses? The human mind instinctively looks for alignment between message and messenger. A voice that speaks of strength, but is rooted in weakness will never truly resonate. But when you've created order within yourself, when you've proven that you can structure your life with purpose and integrity, people naturally begin to take you seriously. Order is not about perfection. It doesn't mean you never fail or never struggle. It means you have established principles and practices that keep your life anchored even in storms. You've built habits that ground you. Disciplined routines, honest self-assessment, consistent action that allow you to project stability in an unstable world. That stability is what allows others to lean on you. They're not just hearing your words, they're witnessing your example. This inner order also sharpens your perspective. Chaos breeds confusion. When you're consumed by internal disorder, everything outside of you feels distorted. Problems seem larger, solutions seem out of reach, and every challenge feels personal. But when you've established a sense of order within, you see reality with clearer eyes. You can separate what you can control from what you can't, and you can respond with reason instead of panic. That clarity doesn't just help you, it allows you to guide others effectively because your judgment isn't clouded by the noise of your own disarray. There's also a natural authority that comes from someone who has disciplined their own life. You don't have to demand respect. It's given to you because people recognize the rare strength it takes to master yourself. Influence becomes effortless because people trust what they can observe, your consistency, your steadiness, your ability to handle adversity without collapsing into chaos. In every great movement or change, the individuals who carried real influence were the ones whose lives were ordered. They were grounded, deliberate, and intentional. Their ability to inspire came not from shouting louder, but from living in a way that others wanted to emulate. Before they challenged the world, they mastered themselves. That is why order always precedes influence, because a person who can command their own life carries a weight that words alone can never achieve. Small victories lead to big impact because meaningful transformation never happens in one dramatic leap. It happens gradually in quiet, consistent steps that compound over time. People often imagine that real change demands a monumental effort or some extraordinary event that flips their life upside down. But the reality is that true growth is built on the daily decisions that seem almost insignificant in the moment. Choices that, when repeated with discipline, shape your character and create a foundation for larger achievements. Consider something as simple as keeping the promises you make to yourself. Waking up at the time you said you would, completing the task you committed to, or maintaining control over your emotions in a moment of frustration might feel small. But those are victories, and each one strengthens the sense that you are someone who can be trusted by yourself and by others. Over time, this consistency builds confidence, and confidence fuels greater action. What once felt impossible becomes achievable because you've proven step by step that you can do hard things. These small victories also teach discipline, and discipline is the currency of all significant change. A person who can master the basics, who can manage their time, maintain their health, or develop a skill consistently, becomes capable of tackling greater challenges. Without that foundation, ambition collapses under its own weight. You can't expect to lead others, build a meaningful career, or influence the world if you can't first govern the smaller details of your daily life. Another overlooked power of small victories is the way they build momentum. Success, even on a minor scale, creates a sense of progress. That feeling of progress is deeply motivating. It pushes you to take the next step, to set the next goal, to keep moving forward when it would be easier to quit. Momentum turns effort into habit and habit into transformation. What once required intense willpower begins to feel natural, almost automatic, because you've trained yourself through repetition. And small victories don't just impact you, they ripple outward. The people around you notice the changes. They see your consistency, your growth, your ability to follow through, and it inspires them. Without saying a word, you set a standard that challenges others to rise as well. Your example becomes a quiet but powerful form of leadership, proving that great change is possible, not by waiting for the perfect opportunity, but by acting decisively and consistently where you are. The beauty of this approach is that it removes the paralysis of perfectionism. You don't have to have the entire path figured out. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You just need to win today in the small, tangible ways available to you. Those victories stack, and before you know it, you've built a life of order, integrity, and influence, one steady step at a time. Hypocrisy weakens leadership because people instinctively follow authenticity, not empty rhetoric. When there's a gap between what someone says and how they live, trust collapses, and without trust, influence becomes impossible. You can have the sharpest arguments, the loudest voice, or the highest position, but if your actions contradict your message, people will eventually stop listening. Words may capture attention for a moment, but only consistency earns lasting respect. This is why genuine leadership begins with integrity. Integrity is alignment, the alignment between beliefs, words, and actions. When that alignment exists, your influence grows naturally because people recognize that you embody the principles you talk about. But when that alignment is absent, when someone demands discipline but lives in disorder, or preaches humility but acts with arrogance, the hypocrisy is obvious. It doesn't matter how carefully you craft your image, reality always reveals itself over time. The danger of hypocrisy is that it erodes credibility even in the smallest ways. One broken promise can undo months of effort. One careless act can undermine years of building trust. People are perceptive. They pay attention to what you do more than what you say, and they measure your integrity not by your intentions, but by your consistency. In this way, hypocrisy is not just a personal flaw, it's a leadership liability that poisons relationships, teams, and even entire movements. What many fail to realize is that hypocrisy often begins subtly. It starts when someone excuses small inconsistencies, telling themselves that the rules they preach don't always apply to them, that certain shortcuts are justified, or that appearances matter more than substance. Over time, those small compromises grow, and the gap between words and reality widens. Eventually, the mask slips, and when it does, it's almost impossible to rebuild the credibility that's been lost. By contrast, leaders who reject hypocrisy, even imperfectly, earn a kind of authority that can't be manufactured. When people see someone admit their mistakes, take ownership of their failures, and work to align their life with their message, they respond with respect. Authenticity, even with flaws, inspires trust because it shows humility and growth. It tells others, I'm on the same journey and I'm willing to hold myself accountable. That honesty is rare, and because it's rare, it's powerful. In any context, whether in families, workplaces, communities, or nations, the most effective leaders are those whose actions make their words believable. They don't need to convince people to follow. People want to follow because they can see the example being set. That's the power of consistency. It turns principles into something tangible, something real. And in a world overflowing with noise and posturing, the quiet strength of integrity stands out, proving that the surest way to lead is to live in a way that leaves no room for hypocrisy. The ripple effect of self-mastery is profound because when you take control of your own life, your influence naturally extends beyond yourself, often without you even trying. People notice stability, discipline, and integrity, and they are drawn to it. You don't have to preach or demand respect. Your life becomes the message. Mastery over your habits, emotions, and decisions creates a quiet authority that words alone could never achieve. When you discipline yourself, you begin to radiate a kind of steadiness that others crave in a chaotic world. Most people live in constant reaction, reacting to emotions, to circumstances, to other people's opinions. But someone who has achieved even a degree of self-mastery stands out. They respond instead of react. They remain calm when situations spiral. They keep their commitments even when it's inconvenient. That consistency builds trust, and trust is the foundation of influence. What makes this ripple effect powerful is that it doesn't rely on force or persuasion. Influence born of self-mastery is organic. A parent who lives out the values they teach doesn't have to lecture their children endlessly. The children see the example and internalize it. A leader who embodies discipline and fairness doesn't need to demand loyalty. People give it freely because they admire what they see. Your actions, repeated over time, create a standard for others, an unspoken challenge to rise higher. This influence often extends further than you realize. One disciplined decision can inspire another person to make a change in their own life. They, in turn, affect someone else, and the cycle continues. The person who quietly works on themselves, building habits, showing up consistently, acting with integrity, can unknowingly ignite a chain reaction that alters the culture of an entire family, team, or community. That is the silent power of living what you believe. Self-mastery also creates clarity and confidence, two traits that make leadership more effective. When you know who you are and have trained yourself to act with discipline, you're not swayed by every opinion or setback. People sense that steadiness and instinctively look to you when things get difficult. In that way, personal mastery doesn't just improve your own life, it becomes a source of strength for others. This ripple effect is also humbling because it shows that real influence isn't about controlling others, but about controlling yourself. By mastering your actions, your emotions, and your habits, you give others a blueprint for how to do the same. You demonstrate through your example that transformation is possible, not through shortcuts or empty talk, but through daily disciplined effort. Over time, this quiet influence can accomplish what shouting, arguing, or demanding could never achieve genuine change in the lives of those around you. Humility and continuous growth are at the core of truly fixing yourself, because self-mastery is never a final destination, but an ongoing process. No matter how much progress you make, there will always be new weaknesses to confront, new habits to refine, and new levels of discipline to reach. The moment you believe you've arrived, you stop growing, and when you stop growing, you begin to slip backward. Humility keeps you grounded by reminding you that there is always more work to be done, not out of shame, but out of a desire to keep becoming a better version of yourself. Humility starts with honest self-awareness. It means being willing to look at your flaws without excuses and without defensiveness. Most people avoid this kind of reflection because it's uncomfortable to admit where they're failing, but that discomfort is where growth begins. It takes strength to admit you don't have it all figured out, to acknowledge that you need to improve in areas that others might not even see. This kind of humility doesn't weaken you, it makes you stronger because it frees you from the need to pretend. Continuous growth, on the other hand, is fueled by discipline and curiosity. It's the mindset that says, I may not be where I want to be yet, but every day I will take steps to get there. Growth requires deliberate effort, reading, learning, practicing, and reflecting. It's built in the small choices you make daily. Choosing to listen instead of always speaking, to correct a bad habit instead of rationalizing it, to push yourself when it would be easier to settle. Each step forward, no matter how small, compounds over time and shapes the person you're becoming. This attitude also protects you from arrogance. One of the dangers of early success or progress is believing you've earned the right to stop trying. That subtle pride can undo years of hard work because it blinds you to your remaining weaknesses. Humility keeps you teachable. It reminds you that there's always more to learn, that discipline can always be sharpened, that character can always be deepened. True strength lies in recognizing that mastery is a pursuit, not a trophy. What's remarkable is how this ongoing process benefits not just you, but the people around you. When others see you constantly refining yourself, they realize that growth is a lifelong journey, not something reserved for extraordinary people. Your example challenges them to adopt the same mindset of humility and persistence. In that way, your personal growth creates a culture of growth where everyone around you is inspired to keep improving. Living this way creates a sense of quiet confidence. You don't need to prove anything to anyone because you know you're in the process of becoming. And that process, anchored in humility and driven by the commitment to continuous growth, is what allows you to build a life of lasting influence and integrity. Thank you for giving me the chance to share these thoughts with you today. My wish for you is courage. The courage to look inward, the courage to take ownership, and the courage to keep growing even when it's hard. Good luck on your journey of becoming, And may your efforts to fix yourself be the spark that inspires real change in the world around you.